Story 1. The Whispering Wind. I came to Skinwalker Ranch to escape the noise of the world. Instead, I found something far worse. On my second night, I heard whispers in the wind. At first, I dismissed them as the sounds of nature, but they grew louder, more distinct. They called my name, urging me to venture into the night. I grabbed my rifle and stepped outside. The ranch was bathed in an unnatural glow, and the shadows seemed alive, writhing and twisting. Then I saw her, a woman standing at the edge of the property. She was pale, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. "Help me," she whispered. Her voice carried on the wind. Against my better judgment, I approached her. But as I drew closer, her face began to change, distorting into something monstrous. Her mouth stretched impossibly wide, filled with jagged, inhuman teeth. I fired my rifle, but the bullet passed through her like smoke. She laughed, a sound that echoed in my head and sent me reeling. The wind picked up, carrying voices that weren't mine. Screams, cries, and taunts that drowned out my thoughts. I ran back to the house and locked the door, but the whispers never stopped. They still call to me, even now, as I sit here with the barrel of my rifle pressed to my temple. Maybe, just maybe, this will silence them. Story 2. The Thing in the Barn. When I took the job at Skinwalker Ranch, everyone in town warned me about the stories. Skinwalkers, UFOs, ghosts, folklore for tourists, I thought. I didn't believe in any of it. I just needed the paycheck. My first few days were uneventful. Feeding the livestock, mending fences, and keeping an eye on the property's vast acreage felt monotonous, but peaceful. The nights, though, were unnervingly quiet. Too quiet. It was on my fifth night when I first noticed something odd. I was locking up the barn, and as I turned to leave, I heard footsteps behind me. Thinking it was a stray cow, I spun around, flashlight in hand. Nothing. The barn was empty. Shrugging it off, I went back to the house. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of low, guttural growling outside my window. Heart pounding, I grabbed my rifle and peered out. The moon illuminated the ranch, but everything seemed still. Then I noticed the barn door was wide open. I knew I had locked it. Gripping the rifle, I stepped outside. The cold air bit at my skin as I made my way toward the barn. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of rot. My flashlight beam swept across the stalls, revealing the livestock, huddled in the far corner, their eyes wide with terror. "Hey!" I called out, my voice trembling. "Who's there?" A shuffling sound came from the loft above me. Slowly, I climbed the ladder, rifle ready. As I reached the top, the beam of my flashlight landed on it. At first glance, it looked like a coyote, but its limbs were all wrong, too long, too thin. Its face was almost human, but grotesquely distorted, with hollow eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. It crouched there, watching me, its lips pulled back in a mockery of a smile. I froze, unable to move, as it mimicked my voice. "Who's there?" The words were garbled, unnatural, like they didn't belong in its mouth. It lunged. I fired, the shot deafening in the confined space. The thing let out an unholy shriek, its body twisting unnaturally as it leapt from the loft to the ground below. I scrambled down the ladder, my flashlight flickering wildly. The barn was empty. The creature was gone. I ran back to the house and locked every door and window, my heart racing. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found tracks in the dirt outside the barn. They started as animal prints, but morphed into something else, something vaguely human. I quit the job that day. I don't know what I saw in that barn, and I don't want to know. But sometimes, late at night, I hear that voice in my dreams. "Who's there?" And I wake up, certain that it's still watching me. Story 3. The Dare. Everyone at school talked about Skinwalker Ranch, but only as a joke. It was the place to scare freshmen during sleepovers or dare each other to visit on Halloween. My friends and I thought we were braver than that. So, one Friday night, we decided to prove it. It was me, Danny, and Maya. We rode our bikes to the edge of the ranch, stopping just before the rusted fence that marked the property line. The air was colder here, the silence heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. All right, here's the dare, Danny said, grinning like an idiot. First one to make it to the barn and back wins. The barn was barely visible in the moonlight, a shadowy outline about 100 yards away. I didn't want to do it. The stories about the ranch, the whispers, the figures in the dark, the things pretending to be people, played in the back of my mind. But I couldn't let Danny think I was scared. I'll go first, Maya said, rolling her eyes at us. She dropped her bike and started walking toward the barn, flashlight in hand. We watched her disappear into the darkness, the beam of her flashlight bobbing until it vanished behind the barn doors. Minutes passed. Too many minutes. Maybe she's trying to scare us, Danny whispered, but I could hear the edge of fear in his voice. Yeah, I said, though my throat felt tight. She'll probably jump out and yell boo. Another minute passed. Then we saw her flashlight beam flicker back on. Maya stepped out from behind the barn. Relief washed over me, but something was off. She wasn't running back like we expected. Instead, she walked slowly, almost mechanically, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Maya, I called out, but she didn't respond. When she got closer, I noticed her face. It was pale, her eyes wide and unblinking. She opened her mouth to speak, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. Help me, it said, the words distorted, like they were being played backward. I grabbed Danny's arm. That's not Maya, I whispered. The thing that looked like Maya smiled, its lips stretching too far. Then it dropped the flashlight, and I saw its hands, elongated, with sharp, claw-like fingers. Run! I screamed, pulling Danny with me. We abandoned our bikes and sprinted down the dirt road, the sound of heavy footsteps pounding behind us. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it mimicking my screams, its voice blending with mine in a horrifying echo. We didn't stop running until we reached Danny's house. When we finally looked back, the road was empty. Maya's parents filed a missing persons report the next day, but I didn't tell them what really happened. Sometimes, late at night, I see her, or whatever that thing was, in my dreams. She's always standing at the edge of the barn, her head tilted, whispering, "Help me."